You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Hello again, everyone. This is Doug Thorpe, and you're listening to another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I'm very excited today. My guest is a gentleman who represents a brand you're going to probably know a little bit about. His name is Steve Robinson, but the brand is Chick-fil-A. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Doug. Honored to be with you. Yeah.
So Steve's journey, he is not, I guess, directly related or involved with Chick-fil-A anymore, other than maybe a board seat. Did I read that right? But
no, I've rotated off the board.
Okay, rotated off the board.
I'm no longer tied to the chicken coop. I'm a free man.
Okay. All right. Well, give us a little bit of your journey first to just kind of level set and hit the high points for us, if you will.
Oh, okay. Well, I grew up in South Alabama, 10 miles from Gulf Shores, a little town called Foley. My father was an entrepreneur. He moved down there in 1948 to start a hybrid seed corn business. So I grew up, even though he didn't own a farm, he leased land. I grew up, raising corn and everything associated with planting it and producing it and harvesting it and packing it and shipping it, and then, of course, selling it. So I started to get fascinated at a fairly young age with not only what all is involved in running a business, but I learned real quick that nothing happens unless somebody sells something, and started to have a fascination with the whole aspect of sales, marketing. And then I was growing up in the 60s, and that was kind of the early years of the growth of brand management. So that kind of captured my attention. So when I went to college, I went to junior college, and then I went to Auburn University. I majored in marketing because it fascinated me. Met my wife there on a blind date, and we've been celebrating life together for 52 years now, believe it or not.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we graduated on the same day and got married 4 days later. And 2 weeks later, loaded up a U-Haul and headed to Northwestern. I went to grad school up there. And after Northwestern, my first job was with Texas Instruments in Dallas, and I was part of their first consumer marketing group to market handheld calculators. And of course, these things were pretty large, and they didn't do anything near what one of these does today. But my focus was how to sell advanced calculators to the scientific market. Mathematicians, engineers, chemists, architects. And so I had to dive deep into the whole area of direct marketing, which I really didn't get at Northwestern. My degree at Northwestern was in communications and advertising, but I didn't have the kind of experience I got at TI. I was there about a year. Phone rings. It's the director of marketing, Six Flags Over Texas. He has an opening. The short of that is I spent a whole day interviewing with him and loved Six Flags. And this was now in the early 70s. They were very, very strong brand-oriented theme park business and good marketers. And I had learned pretty quickly that TI was a great company, but it was an engineering company. And if I was going to really grow and advance, that might not be the place. And so I took the job with Six Flags. The guy who hired me was the brother of one of my classmates at Northwestern. So the summary of that is I worked for Six Flags for 7 years. And my last 4 were with the park in Atlanta, Six Flags Over Georgia. I became the director of marketing there. Let's see, would have been something like 1970, 77, something like that. Having a great time, learned a lot, enjoyed quite a bit of success. Had met some people with Chick-fil-A because we tried to talk them into building a restaurant inside the park. Back then, they were only in about 9 southeastern states, only in malls. Most people knew nothing about them. And so our pitch was, look, why don't you build a restaurant in the park as a way to build your brand, create trial. Our footprint matches your footprint in terms of attraction. Almost did it. Had a store location, designed the whole bit. But the COO, Jimmy Collins, wanted to make money from the restaurant. And we made it very clear to him that you're not going to make money. You're going to build your brand and create trial. But if anybody's going to make money, it's going to be Six Flags, because whatever we used to sell in fried chicken, you're going to kill it. So no, this is planting seeds for your future. Well, they didn't buy that. And so they didn't do the deal. That was something like 1978. And I'll fast forward. I'm sitting in my office during the summer of 1980, early August. The phone rings, and it's Jimmy Collins, the Chick-fil-A COO, on the phone. And he says, Steve, we don't have a marketing department, and we really need to build our capabilities to support the restaurant operators. Your name keeps coming up through our search firm and through the ad agency. Would you have any interest? Doug, when he first said we don't have a marketing department, what flashed through my head was, well, I know you don't have a marketing department, or you probably would have done that deal with me 2 years ago. But I had gained enough knowledge of Chick-fil-A that I'd grown to really appreciate who they were, their culture, their founder, Truett Cathy, the people I met, and they were private. And TI was public. Six Flags was publicly owned. It had come out of the Penco bankruptcy settlement.
Yep.
But they were starting to lean heavily on quarterly earnings and cash flow, and they weren't making that much in the way of reinvestments in the brand. And I was beginning to be a little concerned about the long-term future of Six Flags. And so I thought, sure. I told Jimmy, I'd love to talk to you. Now, remember, I interviewed with Six Flags for an entire Saturday and got the job that night. So at the very least, I thought, okay, 2 or 3 days, if nothing else, I'll learn something. Well, I'll fast forward again. It's now early December 1980. And I'm sitting in the office of Truett Cathy, who's the founder, and I'm still interviewing. And I'm doing it still. At least I'm trying. And I'm having lunch with him, and it's the second time I've spent time with him. And I looked at Truett and I said, Truett, I really love what you got here. I love your product. I really am impressed with your people. I love your operator model. I think I can help you, but what are you looking for in the ideal marketing candidate? And am I the guy? And there's this long pause, Doug, and I'm thinking, okay, I've probably just brought this whole process to a screeching halt. He says, I have absolutely no idea. All I know is whatever it is, I don't want to do it. Very unusual answer. He paused. He said, but what I'm really concerned, and he said, in fact, I'm going to let Jimmy and others figure out whether you can do the job. I'm more concerned about who you are. I want to know that you and I are going to have fun together. We can trust each other, because it's our intent, if we invite you to come here, you're never going to go anywhere else. Okay, now I've had 4 jobs in 8 years, and this is a real paradigm buster. He's laying.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And he paused again, and he said, Steve, you need to understand, the most important decisions we make here are who we invite to join the organization. Because we don't train culture here, we hire it. We try to attract people that have a match with our values, have a match with our vision, have a long-term perspective, people we know we can enjoy, have fun to being around. And so if you come here, I fully expect that you will never go anywhere else. I'm very serious. Okay, when are you going to make that decision, Truett? He says, I don't know. That's kind of up to Jimmy to give me his final recommendation. Shorten the story again, 2 weeks later, Jimmy calls me, he invites me to join Chick-fil-A, and I become their first director of marketing in January of 1981. And Doug, Truett was right. Whatever it is, that needs to be done. He didn't want to do it. There was no marketing department. There was no marketing plan. There was no marketing budget. And I was thrilled because I literally had clean slate. And I'll just tell you, after serving and eventually became executive vice president, chief marketing officer, chief brand development officer, after 35 years of full-time work, I could not have had a finer environment to work in, and an employer in Truett Cathy and Jimmy who were more empowering. I made some serious mistakes along the way, don't we all? But I never, from either of those gentlemen, I never felt threatened that my career was potentially at risk. Well, in fact, quite the opposite. I felt completely empowered to drive creativity and innovation. And because they had a long-term vision, I was able to operate with a long-term vision about how do you develop a brand and not just chase transactions. So that's a real high flyby on how I ended up play.
Well, let me.
I did mention Diane, and I've been married 52 years. I have 2 grown children. I got 4 grandchildren. And today I do consulting and speaking and hopefully spend time with my family as much as I can.
Good for you. Amazing story. So let me get this picture. So 1981, you got that offer to join. What was the footprint of Chick-fil-A at that time?
At that time, Doug, they were in about 9 states, all in the Southeast, with the exception you would have to add Texas, all in malls. And I had sales of a little over 100 million and locations of about, I think, 140 mall stores. Average store volume would have been probably around 400,000 per unit. And I had been there barely a year and a half when the 1982 financial crisis hit. If you have any memory of that or have studied your history, interest rates were not as aggressively managed by the Fed back then. Interest rates got up to over 18%. Mall development came to a crashing halt. Retail sales dropped over 30%. Mm-hmm. And in 1982, I'm now in my second year, and Chick-fil-A is experiencing the first ever sales decline, cash flow crunch. And I mention that because it was, as it turned out, it was one of the greatest things that ever happened. That crisis forced us, Truett and his young executive committee, by 82, he had counting family members, he had 8 members on executive committee and 5 were non-family. And 4 of us were all in our 30s, young. And we're in the middle of a serious crossroads. Go off site. We're going to try to figure out how we can preserve cash and survive. Without taking you through all the details, which I unpacked in my book, we spent about a day working on that, did all we could do, and we spent the next 2 days trying to be very, very clear on why Chick-fil-A exists, what is important to Truett Cathy. Because he had never actually written any of this stuff down. And we wrote the Chick-fil-A corporate purpose in a hotel room up in Lake Lanier in less than 2 days, to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that is entrusted to us and have a faithful impact or a faithful influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. Not one word of that has changed. It is still the corporate purpose. Later, we crystallized some of the 5 or 6 key principles that drove Truett, his values: stewardship, fun, integrity, excellence, teamwork. And the result of that over time, and by the way, leadership didn't move around and go anywhere. We all stayed. And Truett hired Jimmy in something like 19 68 or 69. Jimmy retired in 2001. When he left, we had just hit $1 billion in sales. But until then, that executive committee that they put together had been together from roughly 1981 to 2001 with no turnover. And I mention that because one of the secrets, I think, for Chick-fil-A is, in fact, attract the right people, keep them, develop them, empower them, and maintain a long-term horizon for the business. And the culture becomes the foundation of the business. And what it does, the culture frees up clarity of culture, the corporate purpose, the principles, the brand promise. The clarity of the culture frees up everybody to make decisions closer to the customer and not always having to go vertical to the CEO or to the chairman or the owner.
Right.
And I can honestly sit here and tell you, even something like the cow campaign launch, I never took anything to Truett to show him because he expected it or he required it. I would take major decisions to him out of respect, but never to get his, quite frankly, never looking for his approval, but I didn't want him surprised either.
Yeah.
So tell us. And here's my final line about that. My final. In all those years of 35 years, I never went to his office once where he said, "Why did you do that?" Or that seemed like a big mistake. Not once. So that culture is crucial to what Chick-fil-A has become, what it will continue to be, because it empowers the people in it to be innovative and to make decisions and to make them quicker.
Yeah. Well, I do want to get into this theme of culture, but before we just gloss over it, there's probably folks going to be listening that have the same question that came to my mind. Where did the cow campaign idea come from? Can you make it short? Because I want to get on with the culture.
Yeah. Well, being in the mall environment, by the way, we didn't build our first store on the street until 1986. So being in the mall environment all those years, the mall was the primary medium. So our marketing was designed to help the operators build their business from inside the mall out, not trying to force business in. So how do you maximize foot traffic in the mall, partnership with mall tenants, et cetera? But by the mid-90s, we'd gotten up to about 500 or 600 freestanding stores, mostly in the Southeast, Southwest. We had enough coverage that we had to start thinking about, okay, how do we provide brand, what I called air cover for the operators? We couldn't be a big investor in advertising. TV was virtually out. Okay, so we do an agency search. We pick a firm out of Dallas, the Richards Group. They had a great creative history. Tom Bodett, Motel 6, Home Depot, the Corona Beach campaign, just to name a few. And we told them, look, we're not going to be your biggest client, but we want to be your favorite. And what we mean by that is we want to give you creative latitude to help put us on the map, not because of how much money we're going to spend, but because of the power of an idea. And we're looking to you for the idea. Well, they gave us two big ideas. One was coming out of it, start with billboards. It was the only thing we really could afford 24/7. Secondly, and using billboards, by the way, with not to tell people where to turn or what the product picture was or price, but to build a brand. And then to use billboards to make people laugh. Because one of our principal that I mentioned, one of our core values was to have fun. And we looked at everything going on in the ad industry, and all you saw was food and price and deals. And you could show anybody's chicken sandwich and put a Chick-fil-A logo on it, and you wouldn't know the difference. And that's still true today. Well, 9 months into the assignment, I won't take you through all the creative they came up with. It's in my book. But 9 months into the assignment, they came in with 6 new billboard concepts, and one of them are these guys behind me. 2 cows, one on top, back of the other one painting, Eat Mor Chikin. We loved it. It was the summer of 1996. We put it up just south of the new Olympic Stadium in Atlanta. It created all kind of chatter and buzz. We put one board per market in our top 20 markets. Same thing happened in those markets. We went back to them and we said, we think you got something here bigger than a single billboard idea. Take 3 months. How do these guys become the iconic spokesman for the Chick-fil-A brand? And the goal is very simple. Make people laugh, build our awareness, build our identity, because our advertising is completely, and if you will, I use the word renegade to everything else in the industry. They did that. We saw new creative from them, from everything in media to in-store to promotions, etc. I worked with them for 22 years.
Wow.
Keep it fresh, keep it fun, keep it relevant. It had broad age appeal. People ask me, how did you decide which creative to approve? It was real simple. If my team and I didn't laugh at it, we didn't do it. And that's all we were trying to do, was in a wholesome way, entertain people, kind of be out of the box so much that they would, this is a fast food brand and they're making me laugh. I mean, what are they all about? And then when you go in the store, there's more cow messages, more self-preservation messages from the cow.
Yeah.
So that's how it happened. And, when we eventually put it into our commitment to college football, which really helped also boost the brand, then, pardon the pun, but it really took off. It really got legs. And we did some tremendous work with CBS and ESPN to leverage the cows, not only on media, but in stadiums and major events around the country.
Yeah. I remember the cows actually running around on the field. There was one campaign, I think, that had them characterized, actually live, not just a poster.
Oh yeah. We had cow costumes. We had hundreds of them.
Yeah. Well, that was clearly brilliant. Whoever came up with that campaign idea.
That was Stan Richards' group. But there's the book, my book, Covert Cows and Chick-fil-A, and I unpacked the whole story, not only of the campaign, but of the brand.
Yeah.
In this book.
Yeah. Well, I would really like to get back to this culture idea, because for anybody who's paid attention and done a little study, maybe in business school or otherwise, knows that Chick-fil-A is famous for an incredible culture and clarity of brand purpose, brand value. And you said a couple of things already that I have spoken about or had guests talk about here on this show. When we talk about culture and in leadership development, leadership training, people often quickly gravitate to the notion of how do we build a culture? And I've had guests that have pointed out, you don't build a culture, you grow a culture. Yeah. It's kind of the difference between raising corn on a farm versus bricks and sticks building a building. It's a radical different paradigm. And I have now become a fan. My guests have convinced me that I like the idea of growing a culture versus building one. Yeah. Because I think at the end of the day, you truly don't build a culture. You don't force people to follow a new game plan of what you want to call culture.
Correct. And I think, by the way, that's why probably why so many firms are unsuccessful at it. I think part of the reason for that is, particularly in publicly owned companies, if you keep having turnover with CEOs and CMOs and HR directors and stuff like that, it's very hard to grow a culture, because to grow a culture, you got to have clarity of purpose, which I talked about the Chick-fil-A purpose. You have clarity of values and principles, because if you have clarity of principles, the purpose and the principles become a litmus test for virtually any decision you make. Who am I going to hire for that job? Where are we going to put this, and where are we going to put this $1 million versus $1 million over here? How are we going to distribute talent to maximize the development and the delivery of the brand promise, which by the way, for Chick-fil-A was currently it's very simple. It's we care. It's caring. When I was there, it was where good meets gracious, but fundamentally the same principle. So how do you structure everything going on in the business, the customer-facing experiences, to deliver where good meets gracious? Well, you can't have a lot of turnover.
Right.
You have to have that, the corporate purpose, the principles, and that brand promise help you decide, okay, where our talent and our money got to go? Because we don't have enough of either. We never have enough of either. And so Truett really nailed it in that last interview with me when he said, we don't hire culture here. I mean, we don't build culture here. We hire it. We don't train it. We hire it.
Right.
And I've heard him say many times, every decision we make in terms of new talent, whether it's a staff member or operator, is either going to contribute to the culture being stronger, or if we make the wrong decision, could hurt it. Yeah. And so if you have leadership that thinks that way, and you have leadership that's not constantly turning over, trying to put their fingerprint on the business, now those are big ifs. And I think privately owned businesses, entrepreneur-driven businesses, have a huge advantage in doing what you and I are talking about here. Publicly owned firms, incredibly difficult.
Right. Well, yeah, the publicly owned have already created mass and scale, and they get on the treadmill of simply needing to fill seats, and they don't have the luxury of asking that question, does that person come with behavior and mindset that fits our culture?
That's exactly right.
And because they're just got an urgency to fill the seat and move on. And I will say, as you were describing that, the thought did hit me that actually entrepreneurs suffer that a little bit. They feel the need. I'm working with a couple of owners right now who have small businesses, but they're in the trades. One's an electrical company and another's an HVAC company. And they've got opportunity. It's not about generating sales lead. They've got opportunity. They've got jobs on the board that they would like to execute, but they don't have the staff to do it. So they're in the market looking for the talent they need to go work those jobs. But when you're in a crisis mode of feeling the need to say, I got to grab those jobs, I got to get that revenue so that I can sustain my business, right, you don't get real particular about the culture aspect, or at least the tendency is not to do that, because it's already tough. It's a hard market to recruit anyway. And when you put on a really hard stipulation about, do you sing, dance, and show up the way I would like you to?
Yeah. Character issues. Yeah.
Character issues, you're going to eliminate probably 8 out of 10.
Right. All right, so related to what you just said, let me flip it. And one of the things that Truett, I don't know if Truett and Jimmy sat around and talked about this and decided to do this, but what they did was they intentionally hired talent before they needed it. Now that's risky. It means you got to kind of big step up and say, okay, we're going to make this investment. We're going to make it early. But the advantage of that, just like in the process of recruiting and hiring me, is you take your time. You're not hiring under crisis. You take your time. You think about the long-term implications. What do you think this person can and should contribute to the business, not just next year, but the next 3 years, the next 10 years? And in light of that, let's make sure they're a good cultural personality, chemistry, character fit. So I think part of what's very hard for an entrepreneur or some private organizations is to say, you know what, we're going to set aside some capital instead of a new piece of equipment. We're going to go after talent that's dedicated to the long-term vision of this business. And we're going to take our time and our due diligence and make sure we get the right kind of person, not just the right competency, but the right kind of person.
Yeah. I agree with you, and that brings to mind, and gentleman's been on my show before. There's a guy I know that owns a plumbing company over in Denver, and he has gone so far as to build his own training program. He's got a program that's better than most trade schools you could ever find. And he goes all the way out to the front edge of the grassroots effort to say, kids, just getting out of high school, hey, if you don't know what you want to do, come talk to me. I can teach you how to be a licensed plumber.
Right.
And, the idea is you get to a certain level, and I can guarantee you're going to start making $75,000 a year at, 19, 20 years old if you follow my program.
Right.
And that's a pretty darn good rich offer,
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's had great success, and he basically starts them at minimum wage, but within 3 months, if they've accomplished a certain level of training and passed the test at each level, he gives them a pay bump, and pretty soon, they're up in the $25, $30, $35 an hour, and they don't even have a license yet, but they're making that money.
Yep.
And if you do the math on that, that's starting to be $70,000 a year. And if you're 20, 21, 22 years old, not a bad gig if you have no desire to go to college.
Right. So let's stick with this theme for around looking for competency and character and long term. The people that actually operate Chick-fil-A restaurants are independent contractors. Now, the law covers them as a franchisee, but they are not an equity franchisee. Chick-fil-A finds a site, builds a restaurant, equips a restaurant. Chick-fil-A is the one that does the search, the research, the selection, the vetting on a potential operator, and a potential independent contractor for each restaurant. And the deal that Truett and Jimmy designed in 1969, 2 years after the first 2 stores, because Truett did not like what he saw with 2 stores being run by traditional managers. They were asking him too many questions, and he didn't like that. It is really quite simple, and it hasn't changed since 1969. These independent contractors pay a percentage off the top for the use of the brand and all the support brand services. The employees work for the operator. They're not Inc. employees. They're contractor employees. After all their expenses, they split pre-tax profits with Chick-fil-A Inc. 50-50. Now, that is an incredibly generous concept. And by the way, they only put up $10,000 in earnest money to do the deal. They go through anywhere from a 1 to 2 year training process before they will eventually get a store. That's assuming they've even been selected to be an operator. 1 to 2 more years of training. Today, the Chick-fil-A operator, I don't want to quote it. If somebody's serious about having interest in Chick-fil-A, they can request an offering circular, but it's substantial 6-figure income. Now, it hasn't changed one iota. Long-term, highly engaged leadership in every restaurant. They've gone through the vetting process of trying to create a match on competency and character with the home office, a values fit, culture fit, low turnover at the operator, less than 2% a year, and most of those are retirements.
Mm-hmm.
And on average, the operators attract and keep their team members in their restaurants three times the industry average. So they're making development investments and training in those team members. And so as a result, you have leadership in the restaurants, you have seasoned team members in the restaurants who understand the culture of Chick-fil-A, understand the brand promise of Chick-fil-A, understand how all the systems work, and are able to deliver on this customer-focused brand promise. We're good meets gracious. We really do care. And so that's what it isn't marketing that has propelled the Chick-fil-A brand. it's that leadership model and that the ability to attract and keep great talent, not only at the home office, but in each individual retail location, each restaurant. I think the principle I'm trying to say to you is to reaffirm what you and I were talking about. If you're going to have a long-term horizon, and you can, and particularly if you're willing to release customer interface decisions closer to the customer, empower leadership closer to the customer, the net result is you'll probably have better talent who will stay longer and who will perform at a level well above the competitive set.
So let me ask you this: in the notion of the mission, vision, values that were established, how does that really permeate the organization on a day-by-day basis? What do leaders, managers, operators, what do they really do to help clarify and enforce that message day by day?
Well, it certainly starts at the top with Truett and now his family. Truett passed away in 2014, but the family still owns the business. But I think leaders in the organization understand that doesn't matter where you're pegged in the organization in terms of a hierarchy. We all felt heavy accountability to not only live out the corporate purpose, but to always be talking about it. And to always be talking about the core values, and to tell stories and illustrations all the time about how that decision, that initiative, that investment was influenced or driven by these values and these purposes and this brand promise. So leadership's got to be talking about it and telling stories constantly. You inculcate it into training through videos and class materials. Chick-fil-A does a lot of in-field training where when you're growing at their pace, you're attracting new operators, new team members at a pretty high rate, new staff. So there's a lot of in-field training every year, typically offered and paid for by the home office, because it's that important. And it's not just operational training or marketing training. It's rooted in cultural training always. And then there's this vast digital library of training resources that the operator can use to train their hourly team members. And it's all embedded with the history of the brand, the crucial stories of the brand, all the way from why Truett opened the first Chick-fil-A restaurant, how he created the sandwich, to where in the heck did the cows come from. It's all embedded constantly in those resources for training. And if you walk into a Chick-fil-A restaurant and you say thank you and the employee doesn't say my pleasure, then it means somewhere along the operator is not doing his or her job training, because the core value of personal engagement with every guest and acknowledgement reflected in my pleasure is an expectation every time, every visit, every guest. That's just one example. Just as crucial as 2 pickles on every sandwich. And at the end of the day, it comes down to training. And then the last piece is measurement. People respect what you inspect. And so we put in place, and they're still doing it, tons of ongoing customer research, getting feedback all the time, quantitative as well as focus group qualitative, store by store, rolled up market by market. And so any individual operator has access to this volume of customer data coming back all the time via internet, via intercept studies, via focus groups, market studies, how's Atlanta doing versus Dallas, et cetera. And then you roll all that up and you got a macro picture for the brand. And so there's measurements around zero defects operationally. There's measurements against a delivery of second mile service, and there's specific service behaviors that are measured. There's measurements around creating new customer trial, store by store. And operators understand that their performance and those metrics are crucial to their keeping their restaurant, and or if they ever want to move to another one, to have that opportunity, those metrics have to be in the top 25% or something like that to even be considered. So it's all the way from what some people would consider fuzzy purpose and values down to constantly inculcating the organization through storytelling, through regional training, through digital training. And then you inspect what you want to have respect, you measure and complete the loop. So, for example, one of the critical questions in our research we developed with the help of a guy from Bain Company, Fred Reichelt, a book he wrote called The Ultimate Question. And that question is used in all of our research, whether it's intercept studies or digital or whatever. Based upon today's visit to this restaurant, how likely are you to recommend Chick-fil-A to a family member or friend? 1 to 10, 10 being absolutely 1, I never would do it. And what we discovered as we started doing that research was we wanted 10s. Because it was the 10s that told other people about the brand. They were the brand advocates in those customers. They told other people, they came more often, and by the way, they had no problem with paying full price. And when we first started doing that research, about 5 to 6% of the customer base were 10s. And I don't know what it is today, but the last time I talked to the guy that took my job, it was in the 20s. Well, that's how you grow a business.
Yeah.
When you got millions of customers out there promoting your brand because they love you. And they not only tell other people about the brand, but by the way, when you screw up, they'll tell you that you screwed up, which they're doing you a favor when they do.
Right.
You build in a mechanism for them to communicate easily through the operator, through comment cards, through the internet, whatever. So you got this constant loop of feedback, and that it's unbelievable. All this drives innovation.
Right. Well, and I think what you plotted there was the message that I think business owners that might be listening need to think about. It's one thing to take your leadership team and go have a retreat and say, let's write down our sense of mission, vision, values, purpose, whatever you want to call it, and put that on a board or in a book or in a training. But it takes the execution day by day to live it and grow it, like we said at the start.
And Doug, you have to preach it. No matter what role you have in leadership, whether it's corporate staff or a restaurant operator, you got to be constantly preaching it.
Right.
I mean, we're serious about this. We're going to pursue second mile hospitality, which I unpack in the book. I won't try to do it here, but we're going to pursue second mile hospitality because nobody expects that in the fast food industry. Now, why would we do that? Because we can do it. We have a culture that can do it. We have leaders in the restaurants who can do it. We're on a long haul mission here. We're not just focused on quarterly earnings. We're not just chasing transactions. We actually want to build relationships with people. But why do we want to build a relationship with people? Because we want to glorify God and have a positive influence on people.
Right.
Now, in the process, there'll be better customers and better brand advocates. But the purpose drives a commitment to a genuine guest encounter that says we care, and we're dealing with millions and millions and millions of customers. But if you can do it. I'll just say that. I think Chick-fil-A's evidence. Do they do it every time? Probably not. But it's a pretty high hit rate.
Yeah, very good. Well, Steve, we're about up on time here. I think this has been amazing, and I was curious before, and I really appreciate you leaning in and sharing all these with us. Tell us the title of the book again so that everybody can.
Sure. The title of the book is Covert Cows and Chick-fil-A. How Faith Cows and Chicken Build an Iconic Brand. It's basically a biography of the brand. Truett Cathy, the founder, and then I'm the storyteller.
Great.
It's on Amazon. It's in hard copy. It's in there's audio, and I think it's also in download digital if people want to do it that way.
Well, we will have all of those links, as we always do, folks. We'll have that in the show notes here, and also the link to get to Steve's consulting group that he now operates. If you're interested in connecting with him and learning more, again, just hop down in the show notes. You'll get all that data, and you can have those links. So, one last time, Steve, thanks so much for sitting in. This has been great. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Todd. It was a pleasure. You bet.
Well, folks, with that, we're going to kind of put a bow on this, wrap it up, say goodbye, but do want to remind you, we've got a video version of this show over on YouTube, channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Get over there, take a look, and you'll see more of this story. But for now, we're going to sign off, say goodbye. Go out there and make it a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.